Hello, everybody. How are y'all? Yeah, y'all good? It's a Tuesday, the day before Valentine's Day, so I hope that the love that we're going to feel tomorrow is still in here today, okay? Welcome, everybody. This is Audio Technology and Note-Taking. My name is Patricia Hartley, and I'm from the Student Academic Resource Center, and I'm also presenting here today with...
Hi, everyone. My name is Brad Held. I work at the Student Accessibility Services. I work with technology to help find students with disabilities technology they need. I wanted to actually mention the URL link. It's a little bit hard to see right now, but I can actually repeat it. We don't have handouts for you, but if you do want a copy of the presentation to download later on, you can go to this bit.ly link. It's bit. Taking. Be easy to go to. This also will be on the last slide so you can see it again. It's a little bit bigger on the last slide, I just noticed. So, okay.
In addition to that, we're also live streaming this workshop. You will... There is a camera there, but no worries. It's not for you. It's good. This is good. So you know that we offer several services, not just as it relates to tutoring, but also academic support services as well. Our primary responsibility is peer tutoring and then supplemental instruction. Peer tutoring happens in any of our 3 labs. We have one in our Student Academic Resource Center, which is Howard Phillips Hall. We have another in our College of Engineering and Computer Science, and then we also have one in our Veterans Academic Resource Center. Both of those areas serve as our partnership areas, and students, no matter whether you're a veteran or not, no matter whether you're a computer science major or not, you can attend tutoring in any of our 3 facilities, and it is free for students. We also have online peer-assisted learning, so that's OPAL. It's basically online tutoring for students in a few subjects that we offer it in. For more information about the schedule for OPAL, you can find that online at our sarc.sds.ucf.edu website. We also offer learning skills consultations, which I like to think of as more of like a one-on-one workshop. So if you feel like this note-taking workshop was great, but you need a little bit more detail, then you can always set up a LSC. You just give us a call, and then we will set up you an appointment. In addition to that, we also have our ACE coaching program. It's also a great program. I like to think of it as more of an accountability program. So you'll have like an ongoing coach with you throughout the semester, and then they'll kind of check in with you as it relates to some of your needs, making sure your study skills are good, that your time management is good as well. But I like that program because it is a good accountability program. And then, of course, academic success workshops, which is what you are seeing here. We offer them fall, spring, and also in the summer. In our summer time, we typically do those in our housing facilities, but in fall and spring, we typically have them in more popular areas, so over here in the student union. Okay.
So I'd like to share a little bit about Student Accessibility Services. We primarily work with students with disabilities, and our views are that disability is an anchor part of rich diversity here at University of Central Florida. We work collaboratively with both student, faculty, as well as staff to create that accessible, inclusive environment so that students are on that level playing field with the rest of their other students. One of the common questions we usually get from students is what kind of accommodations does your office offer? And so we break it down here into certain categories. The first and one that most students need is test-taking accommodations. And so you can see we offer extra time or low distraction environment in addition to a use of a computer or certain type of scribe or someone to read for the person with a disability. Another common, which you're here today to learn about, is note-taking. For students that need an in-class note-taker due to their disability, maybe they can't even use technology, then we offer those services for those students. But more and more students, and you'll learn today, are moving towards independence of using technology. We'll also have a lot of assistive technology for our students. This can be anywhere from screen text-to-speech software, which we'll learn about, a Smartpen, again, we'll learn about, as well as speech recognition that students use, for example, students with low dexterity and can't use a keyboard. And then for our students that are deaf, hard of hearing, we also offer real-time captioning and sign language interpreting services for those students. So to get connected with our office, if you do have a disability, it's actually very simple. We make it a no-hassle situation. The student will set up a welcome meeting with our office. And so from that initial meeting, you'll sit down with an accessibility consultant to answer questions about your disability, where are those barriers that are being faced with your disability. And then at that point, we explore those options. Those could be accommodations to create that access for you in the classroom. Then you'll get an accommodation letter notification sent out to all your professors as well as yourself that give you an outline of what accommodations you'll be using. And then lastly, if you have any questions throughout the semester, concerns, any problems with the professors, at any point they can contact our office and then get help with it if needed.
Okay, so what is the best way that y'all think it is to read a textbook or take notes? Give me some of the methods that y'all currently use. What are some best ways to take notes or to read your textbook? Throw it out there. Boom, highlight the definitions of the bolded words. What else? Anybody have any other techniques? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so basically outlining the main points within your textbook. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Okay, summarizing each subheading, that's really good. That's awesome. Everything that y'all have all said today are very good techniques and methods. I'm going to tell you some like specifics and some things that will work and that have proven to work, but it does not mean that the method that you're currently using does not work. I tell you this, and you'll see it on the other slide, no matter what is working, keep doing it if it's working, right? In terms of tips for concentration, I wanted to specifically talk about that because even if you are reading a textbook, you're taking notes, you're in class, it's important that you are concentrating. So in order to do that, you need to do what you need to do in order to put yourself in the mindset of, I'm going to be studying for, say, chemistry. All right, I'm excited, I'm ready. Even if you're not excited and you're not ready, just kind of like talking yourself into that mode because concentration is important for your long term. What we're going to talk about specifically today is how you can kind of break some of your study sessions down into small sessions so that you can have the most effective long-term effect. So breaking it down into little small terms gives you a chance to sort of have that active learning as you're studying, as you're taking notes, as you're reviewing notes from class, those sorts of things that'll build you up into your long-term memory. So varying your study activities, that's also a way for you to concentrate. So if, for example, you're studying a subject and maybe studying chemistry for more than 3 hours like overwhelms you, well, take a break in between that 3 hours and then come back a little bit later to for a more effective study period. Okay. Also, study with a pen or a pencil in hand or a doodle pad. Make sure that all your materials are with you. So if you sit down and you're studying and you need the book and you need the online code to get into the online component and you need the notes for class and you need a water on the side and then a little snack, right? To make sure that you're concentrating and where you need to be, it is important for you to set your study period, your study sessions up like that so that you have no distractions, okay? Also turning off your phones, any electronic device, that's also something that's imperative. I know that a lot of times we want to study with music, but research does show that if you don't study with music and it's like absolutely quiet, studying is even more effective, okay? Using a worry sheet, that's great. So sometimes we'll be in the middle of studying and we'll remember, oh my goodness, did I lock the front door, right? You can write that stuff down, right? So that you can later on address that and you don't have to worry about addressing it while you're in the middle of your study periods as well. So I'm going to ask y'all a few questions. Just raise your hand. How many of y'all actually get about 7 hours of sleep per night? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, then that's a good amount of people. That's a bit like 7 or 8 people that raise your hand. That's good. How many people eat at least one fruit and one vegetable per day? Yes. Okay, this is really good. I'm loving the feedback that I'm getting. Over half the people in here. And then how many of y'all have at least 3 hours of just you time throughout the week? You have your own personal you time. Okay, Netflix can count, you know, if you're kind of catching up. That's more like you time, focusing on something that you really want to do. All of these things are good, and the reason why I specifically brought them up, because research does show if you get at least 7 hours of sleep, if you're eating one fruit, one vegetable like per day, and then you're also having some time for you, then you're more likely to be even more successful, and then you're able to really, truly concentrate.
One thing that I'd like to add, those are really great tips, is that we are big on earplugs for especially students with attention deficit disorders in our office. And so some of the methods that we is actually earplugs. You can get them at any Walmart or Target, very cheap, and you can get them just to go into your ear, and they block out all the external sounds of someone maybe walking past or someone tapping their pencils. That's going to cause more distraction. So it'll help with your concentration to try some earplugs. Again, they're very affordable and very cheap to actually have.
Okay, so in order to make sure that you are taking notes effectively, reading the information that you need, you also have to concentrate, but you need to also manage your time, because if you don't manage your time, then when are you going to actually read your book, when you're actually going to review your notes, right? So if you have a planner or a to-do list or other forms of recording, that's what you can do in order to just make sure that you kind of keep on track. How many people in here have a planner? Okay. How many people use an electronic planner, like some sort of a calendar, that sort of thing? And then how many people use like the old-fashioned planner, like something physically, like in person? Okay, so more people still use the old-fashioned planner method versus, well, out of the people that we surveyed in this room. Individuals tend to still like the old-fashioned writing it down method. I actually still use that method as well. Our website actually has some detailed information about how you can manage your time, and then how you can break your days down to ensure that you have the most that you're using your time the most effectively. Give yourself more time than you think you need. So if you know you're not good at math and you're studying for Cal 1, then you may want to say, oh, well, chapter 1, it typically will take me an hour. Double that. Give yourself at least 2 hours. And once you actually get into like a studying routine or like a study habit that you have, you can kind of gauge, do you truly need that entire time to study for that specific subject? So we kind of have like a little bit of a method that we use to kind of determine how long you should study for each of your classes. So for each 1 credit hour, we say that you're supposed to study 2 hours per 1 credit hour, okay? So if you have a 3-hour credit class, then how many hours per week am I supposed to study for that particular class? That's right. So 6 hours per week for that 3-hour credit class, okay? Like I said before, my undergrad was actually in theater and speech communication, so I know that for theater appreciation, I didn't have to have as much time to study. So it was a 3-hour class. I know I didn't need 6 hours a week to study for that particular class, right? But I knew when I took chemistry, I needed to make sure that I put in some extra time for chemistry. So although chemistry was a 3-hour class, I did need more than 6 hours a week to study. And I actually snatched some time from my theater appreciation to make sure that I used that to study more for chemistry, okay? You see how it kind of balances out, but you don't know what your actual studying pattern is if you haven't tested yourself out to see if you can actually do it, okay? So what is the best way to read my textbook and take notes? There is no correct answer. I said it earlier, if you got a way and it's working, keep that method and then build up on that from there. You can also try some different tools until you find one that is right for you, and it may take some different strategies in order to really gauge what is the best for you, and it also your strategies may vary depending on the subject. So maybe you're taking electrical networks, and electrical networks takes a lot of different types of studying. You can't do it the same way you were studying for your theater appreciation class. Okay, so just all of those things to take into account. So there's a method that I wanted to tell you about, the Cornell system. Has everybody heard about the Cornell method? Okay, perfect. So typically what you do is you will take about 1/3 of the page, you kind of draw a line there, and then you will have it, I like to think of it as more of a Jeopardy style thing. So one side of it, you'll typically have like your questions, and then the other side of it, like you'll have the actual answers. I gave you a handout. Each of you should have received a handout. It's called the 6 Steps to Faster Learning. Did everybody receive one of these? Perfect, there you are. Then I have a young man in the back. I'm gonna give it to y'all if you'll pass it back. But on the 6 steps for faster learning, it will break down for you the exact Cornell method and then how you can utilize that, and then an example of a question on one side and then an answer on the opposite side. What I love about the Cornell method is, one, it helps you to really gather and put information like all into one space so that you can then organize it and then learn it and process it like that. I also think it's a good method for you to be able to test yourself. So if you have written in your notebook and on one side or 1/3 of the page, that's where you have all of the questions, then the opposite side is where you actually have the answers. If you have a sheet of paper that's clear, you can put it over, not clear, a sheet of paper you can kind of put over it. You can test yourself based off the question. Oh, do I know the answer? And then while you're testing yourself, you can always kind of like look and see. But it's a good testing method as well. So I love the Cornell method. And there's also some additional methods and some ways in which you can modify it. So if you want to put your book notes on the left, complementing the class notes on the right, you're more than welcome to as well. And then, of course, there is a visual example for you and an example on the handout. So the note card method, I personally use this probably the absolute most. My undergrad was obviously in theater, so we did a lot of memorizing the lines. So I would have on one side a cue line, which is the line that they tell me in order to know what my line is after that. So on one side, I would typically put my cue line, and then on the other, I would actually put my line. What would be great about that is if I am, say, for example, just in the student union one day and I have my note cards with me, I can go through them and I can study my lines that way. I can also give them to a friend, and then they can also help me study as well. So the old-fashioned method of like note cards, putting the questions on one side and the answers on the other, that's always a great form as well.
I'd like to add to it, for those folks that do like the electronic side, I guess, being the technology specialist, I do like that. But there's a number of websites. One particular is called Quizlet that actually is very good to have your virtual note cards if that's your type of learning. Maybe you don't want to carry on that big 500 stack of SAT cards like you did. Like we all remember doing that. But Quizlet's really good to really have things more mobile and digital. There's also a lot of subjects that you can share your notes. Maybe, for example, you're really good at making note cards, so why keep them to yourself? If there's someone else is going to learn from them, you can also share them with friends as well as the world. So.
We got somebody that is a representative for Quizlet. That is good. I agree with him. Also, there's different apps that you can download on like your iPad, things like that, if you just want to write with your stylus while you're in the classroom versus it actually being like in the paper form. I'm also studying for the GRE, so that's another reason why I'm kind of in this whole note card method as well. I am a little bit old-fashioned when it comes to the note cards. But there's also the ability to be able to note some of your main points as well. I think somebody mentioned that, like kind of noting the main points while you're there, like within your book. You can do that. A lot of the times when it comes to this, typically you're able to just kind of gauge most of the information in the class. You're a good listener probably, and you're like, all I need to do is just kind of like write down some of the main things that the professor is talking about. You're able to do that through this method. You can also use this method while you're reading through your notebook, and you can highlight some of the defined information in there as well. There's also this method. Now, this is a non-traditional way. This isn't necessarily like the traditional way, but it's like a sticky note method. If you're a person that's just like, hey, I listen in class, I'm able to go back, I read, I process it, I just need to kind of just test myself as I go along, feel free to just have some sticky notes on the side. You can just put some questions and answers on your sticky note and then just kind of like test yourself a little bit before your exam.
So I'd like to think that audio recording, which is a great thing, can really help inside the classroom. I know our students a lot of times miss information of what the professor's saying, especially if that professor, for example, has an accent, or maybe that professor is talking very fast, trying to get through as much content as possible. So it's a case where with audio, you're not missing that, and you can go back to it and listen to it. Another advantage of audio is that you can actually listen to that lecture later and annotate it. So like you didn't have to capture everything, but you know you can go back to it later. You can also concentrate on what's being presented as opposed to actually having to write 1,000 words a minute in order to keep up with that professor that's covering a lot of content. You can also easily recall critical details from the class lecture. Maybe there was something that was very, very important, and for some reason you're with the audio recordings, you can actually go back and listen to that. You can also review difficult subjects, and so if you weren't certain of something, you could review it. And then for students with disability, there's a request, a volunteer note taking classroom. They can actually take their own notes with that. So, maybe talk a little bit louder. Good. Okay. All right. Some top features of note taking. So let me step back a second and mention what you've seen audio recording, and so we can take an old-timey, I'll call it old-timey. We can take a audio recorder, whether it's tape or digital, and hit the record button and record. The problem with that, even if it's on our smartphone, a lot of times we have to listen back to that recording. So if it's an hour lecture, we got to listen back to that hour, and there's no navigation. So one of the reasons we call audio recording note-taking technology is because that audio recording is now navigationable, be able to study better. And so that's one of the top features of it, is to be able to navigate that audio effortlessly and be able to highlight things you want and not have to listen to the entire hour lecture from start to finish again. You can also sync your handwritten notes with some note-taking technology. So for example, as you're writing, the audio that's being spoken can also be synced up and matched together. Can also, with some of the technology, upload professor presentations and sync that audio. So as the professor is actually flipping through slides, you can flip through slides on the audio recording and match up the recording as it's going along. Can also save a historical record of those important concepts, so you can go back to review them later on. You can also share notes with your peers. For example, if you're doing collaboration work, you can share your notes with someone else and you can compare them. And then I think the biggest part, that whole listening to the whole hour for an hour, I don't want to do that. I want to delete when someone raises their hand and mentions something that I don't need to study. And so to be able to delete unnecessary audio can really help you when you're reviewing for a test or prepping for any type of studying. The first technology I want to tell you about is called a Livescribe Echo Smartpen. Now, in our Student Accessibility Service Office, we do offer these for students with disabilities, but they're very affordable. They're under $100, and you can purchase them on Amazon, on Walmart, wherever you buy your office supplies are. What I like about this is it records everything as you're writing it. So, for example, as that professor is going over that content and you're jotting down your shorthand notes, you can actually know that audio is going to be synced up with your shorthand notes. You can make diagrams, symbols, audio. You can actually write as little as you want. As long, like, for example, the main point method that I was talking about earlier, you can use that method and be able to go back to it later on. You can also allow for to slow down. Maybe that professor is going that content like 100 miles an hour. Even as a recording, it's still too hard to keep up with, but you can slow down that recording. You can also transfer your notes to your computer. Maybe, again, if you're that electronic type person and you want to be able to share those notes digitally, you can transfer them on a computer. I have a quick, about a minute video that I'd like to show the group that'll give a good overview of it.
This is the Echo Smartpen from Livescribe. It records everything you write and hear. Write notes during a meeting or lecture. Draw diagrams. Mark important information. To replay, just tap your notes and high-quality audio plays back from that exact moment. You can jump forward or go back to notes from days, months, even years ago. The Echo Smartpen connects to your PC or Mac computer by USB cable to transfer your notes and audio to Echo Desktop. After the transfer, your digital notes and audio come to life as an interactive document called a pencast. Pencasts allow you to hear, see, and relive your notes exactly as they were recorded. To search your handwritten notes, type in any word. Echo Desktop searches for every place that word appears in your writing. Stay organized with custom notebooks by combining pages from different notebooks. Notes can be transcribed into typed text by downloading an app that's sold separately. You can even share your notes and audio as an interactive PDF, viewable by anyone using a computer or mobile device. The Echo Smartpen. It's time your notes worked for you.
So sorry. So you can see this device here. It's really neat because, like, the Bluetooth version of the Livescribe 3 actually makes it so you can, because it uses a tablet, you can take your stylus and swipe across and it will instantly decide, okay, assuming you have decent handwriting, it'll actually automatically take it into text, so you can do a full page at a time. So the Livescribe 3 is the newest edition that the Livescribe has made. We have mostly the Echoes, and those are the ones that have been around the most. But does anyone have any questions about this device? Yeah.
You have to buy
The paper.
the paper.
Yeah, so that's a good point to make. Thank you for bringing that up. So the paper, you do have to purchase it. It has like this GPS paper to be able to match up what you're writing, so it can keep track as you're writing. It has a little camera at the bottom of it to be able to sync what you're writing. The paper, though, is not that expensive. If you're used to buying a UCF branded notebook, which is anywhere from $4 to $5, that's about how much a notebook will cost. These are 150-page notebooks, so they're going to last you a long time too. So, good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions about Livescribe Smartpens? Nope. Okay, another note-taking technology I want to introduce you to, if you haven't already heard about it, is less of a of a physical the note-taking tool and more so a software note-taking tool. I'm actually going to start the video straight from here, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Note-taking is one of the toughest study skills to master, yet one of the most important. In fact, many studies have proven that the students who take good notes ultimately get better grades. So why is this? Well, note-taking serves two essential functions: capturing information and synthesizing it. What do we mean by that? Well, simply put, it's building connections between new information and the things that you already know. So imagine that your brain is a library, and it's full of bookcases that represent different areas of knowledge. When you get given a new piece of information, your brain has to find a gap to store it in. If you don't catalogue information in this way, you're probably going to struggle to remember it later. Rewording, summarising and organising are all essential steps to help your brain with this process of cataloguing. And that's exactly what's happening when you're taking your notes. But creating good notes during a long class is really difficult. There's just too much for your brain to do at once. So it's no wonder that so many students find it a challenge. So what's the solution? Well, if the problem is having too much to do at once, then surely the solution is to break up the process into manageable stages. Sonison's Audio Note Taker is a tool which makes it easier to take better notes. With Sonison, you capture your information first, then summarise it later in your own time. Simply start by pressing record on your laptop or mobile device. You'll see that instead of displaying the recording on one long timeline, Sonison breaks the audio up into little chunks of information each time it detects a pause. So unlike most audio files, you've now got something that's really easy to navigate. While recording, you can colour highlight information quickly by using keyboard shortcuts. Think of it as using a highlighter pen with text. It makes it really easy to locate key information. You can import presentation slides, organising your audio and text alongside, so you're building those really important relationships between different types of information. You can type as much or as little as you like during recording, but we recommend that you colour highlight live as you capture the audio, and then come back later to create detailed notes. Sonison is packed with features that make all of this really easy. It's that simple, and it really works.
So this is one of those tools that's easier to let you watch a video to give an overview of what it is. But really, essentially, it's a software that you can put on your Windows or Mac computer. They also offer an app that's less featured but still records if you want to put it on your smartphone as well. And so what many students do is they take their laptops or their smartphones into the classroom, check the professor's policy on recording to make sure it's all right, but then they go ahead and hit the record button, and then it will actually start making a big long line of audio that's chunkable. And why is that chunkable part important? Well, your professor is going to have those natural pauses in their speech. I did one really long just then to show an example, but they are going to take a breath and stop. And when they do stop, there'll be those breaks there that you can then navigate through very easily and quickly with tab keys, or you can actually use your mouse to do it. But what makes these chunks so important is, I use that example of someone raising their hand and asking a question that, to be honest, you really didn't need to review and listen to again. You can mark them with a certain color. Like for me, it's a red color. So I'll mark it with the 2 key, which is red on my computer, and then I go through and delete all the reds, and I know I don't need to go back to that. I can pretty much take on my graduate level courses, which as y'all know are not like an hour and a half, they're like 2-hour courses. I can take one of those and navigate it down to about 30 minutes worth of actual audio that I need to go back and study. So it makes it so it's saving a lot of time. Maybe there's something I didn't understand that the professor was going over. I read it, but I really didn't understand it. Well, as they're going over it, I know I need to go back and listen to it, so I'll make it a yellow key, and I think that's the 3 key on my computer. And I just hit the 3 key over as the professor is going over this topic, and then wait and listen if I need to highlight another piece. So you can see how it's easy to navigate that audio, but also make it so it's easy for studying. The good part is that it is free for our UCF students. So if you go to this link, and again, you'll have to download it later on. You can download the PowerPoint later on, but It's the CARS website, which stands for Knights Academic Resource Services, cars.sds.ucf.edu/Sonocent. Again, it will be if you want to download the presentation from UCF Notetaking at the bit.ly link, it'll have that. But it's free to download. What I like about it too is it actually has a 14-day trial to give you the option to decide whether or not it's the right tool for you. So that way the university doesn't incur a lot of cost if you decide you don't like it. So if you do like it after those 14 days and want to use it for the rest of the class, then at that point you can actually contact the email that's on the instructions, and they'll renew it for the rest of the semester. So, any questions about this tool? Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times for some folks, they do want to just, because it's a passive, I think, note-taking tool. So sometimes people like myself just want to sit back and hit a shortcut key and color highlight. But by all means, you can actually switch to this pane right here very easily and then start typing the notes if you want to. Keep in mind that you can go as fast and catch as much as you want, because you can always go back to the audio and listen. So yes, you can do that. Go ahead, Beth. I think you had a second question. Let me get her second question. Yeah. Yeah, so as you can see, especially with the slides, you can see there's panes here. So as you get done typing, you can actually create a page break. And so, for example, the next audio will go to this part. And so, like, as most students, they sync it up with the slides as the professor's going over them. And so they'll let this go, and then the professor stopped right there and started the new slide, and they opened a new page. So you can see that break that's right there. In there. So there's a way to not necessarily sync it up per se, but at least have it in the same section so that when you're studying, you know exactly all this is about this slide. Next slide will be all about that. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me get to this question right here.
Do you know if the 14-day trial is the full version?
Yes, it is. So it's completely full version. There's nothing locked out. It just, after 14 days, it says this license is expired. If you want to keep it, contact the administrator, which happens to be me, and I'll go ahead and extend it for you, no problem. Now, the actual phone version, because you have to think about your smartphone, does have a smaller screen, so there's less features. For example, you won't have the actual slide content, but you still have this portion there that you can still highlight as well as make changes. So the smartphone, again, I wouldn't say it's less featured. It just doesn't have all the screen area to be able to do everything that might be on your computer. So the smartphone app will have less options. It'll still have the main core features, which is to record and highlight, whereas if you're using your smartphone, using your computer, it'll have all the features available. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes, it does. It's an easy sync. As long as they're both connected to the same Wi-Fi, it's a matter of actually just hitting a button and you sync the code, almost like you sync your Bluetooth. It's that simple. It takes very little time too.
Do you suggest us to sit closer to the professor?
That's a very good question. I think you're going to have to look at your setting. Like, for example, some professors in the larger classroom buildings will use a microphone and some won't. So you're really going to have to get a feel with how loud your professor projects their voice. I have a deep voice, so I'm going to project mine. But you might have, for example, someone who doesn't talk as loud, and you might want to sit more on the first 3 or 4 rows. It does a pretty decent job, though, as far as recording. There's a cleanup tool that actually takes background noises. Like, for example, if someone's hitting your chair or kicking their feet or making some little, repetitive noise, you can actually clean that out, and it'll focus just on the actual speech. So that's one of the tools that'll help there. Maybe if you're not as close and you're hearing people snipper in the background with some type of side conversation, you can block those out. Yep. Any other questions about this tool? Okay. Is this your slide or mine?
On this slide, we're going to talk a little bit about some non-traditional reading and studying. We already talked a little bit about some of the non-traditional ways of, like, the sticky note method, where you can just kind of put that in your book and then kind of test yourself, like, as you're studying. If you have trouble reading the text because you are an auditory learner, try using audiobooks or an e-reader for some of your classes. I know that the public library, actually, I'm just going to throw them in there. The public library, Orange County, they have like a downloaded app. It's called Hoopla that you can use, and it's free, basically audiobooks. And sometimes the books that you have in your classes will be on the audiobook list. Yes, ma'am. Hoopla, it's Hoopla. So if you have trouble sort of like reading yourself, the audiobook, if it's available, that's something that you can use. If you have trouble keeping up in class, you can always ask your professor if you can record them, as Brad was saying, but you do need to get permission, just as a reminder. Just ask them if you can record them, and then take notes later when you can actually like focus, concentrate. And once again, remember, if you actually are recording, when you sit down to study, because you're going to make sure that you set aside at least 6 hours a week for that 3-hour class. When you're sitting down during those blocks of time, you also have that recording with you, along with your snack, your water on the side, your book, right, and then whatever notes you took. So you want to make sure, as a reminder, that wherever you decide that you're going to study, it's a comfortable place for you to study, and you have everything it is that you need, and it's free of distractions. We talked about earbuds that you can actually use. If you don't have earbuds and you just have headphones, feel free. You don't have to plug it into anything. You can put the your headphones in, and they can just serve as earbuds until you can get some. But they really are very affordable. If reading and studying traditionally is not enough, keep in mind the resources that you have. Can you name some of the textbook class UCF just overall resources, a resource that you can use if you're having trouble in class, whether it's taking notes or understanding? You can come to SARC. You can always come to SARC. You can always ask your professor too. Sometimes the professor will have different methods. I know that the Student Academic Resource Center, we serve as the academic support service on campus, but if you're a part of MASS as well, they also are an academic support service on campus for students. In addition to that, there's sometimes little pockets of areas like chemistry. Sometimes they'll have a lab. I know that the business school, there's the Dixon School of Accounting, where they help students with managerial accounting, financial accounting. But there are areas on campus that can help you. Sometimes you just have to ask, or just read your syllabus, because sometimes the information is in your syllabus, but we just don't look there.
One thing that I can actually say is that resource is that CARS website that I mentioned before, the NICE Academic Resource Services. You can do a Google search for that along with UCF. It'll actually pull up some more tools.
Hi, my name is Australian Erin. I am the latest text-to-speech voice in Read and Write Gold.
Sorry.
To help students understand what is being read, I can change the rate of my voice. I can speak very fast for good established readers, or I can talk very slow for readers with a print disability. In the next few slides, Brad will be describing how academic success is being reached at the University of Central Florida with the help of some of the latest assistive technology.
So I admit, I'm sorry, I did a little parlor trick there. You actually don't have to use an Australian voice. I thought I'd have fun with it, and I thought I'd let some people hear what the voice sounds like when I talk about text-to-speech, which is what I'm going to talk about next. A lot of times the people think about robotic voices. They think of one of those old 80s movies, or maybe Stephen Hawking's, where they hear a robotic voice, and the first thing they say is, no way I'm going to listen to my textbooks that way. But you can hear it's a lot smoother. Even though you can tell it's a synthesized voice, you can tell it's a lot smoother to be able to understand. But I just wanted people to hear the voice and know what it sounded like. Again, you can use an American Tom. You can use an Australian Karen. I think there's a Sophia Spanish if you read Spanish as well. But the technology that I'm talking about is text-to-speech. And so we actually started calling it assisted technology because we was working with our students with disabilities. But what we learned is that this tool actually can benefit all students. All the students do reading, all students do writing. And so if there's tools out there that can help them with that, we're going to call it a literacy tool so everyone can use it. So this software that you see the name of it right there is called Read and Write, and is a literacy tool that you can actually download from the CARS website with that link. Again, go to the CARS and type in Read and Write. You'll be able to find it. It's a free software that you can download on your Windows or Mac computer. What I like about it is that it pops a toolbar on the top of your screen, no matter which window you go into, whether it's a browser or whether or not it's an actual PDF, a Word document, it will read it aloud for you at the pace that you want. So for example, you can put that human sounding voice on your computer as opposed to maybe asking your roommate. We have some students with disabilities, they have an extra book and their mother would actually read, mother or father, spouse would read to them. And that's pretty embarrassing to not be able to have that independence on your own. So what this software does is allows for students to have that independence. We also, as I mentioned earlier in Australia, and Karen showed the examples, they can change the speed. Maybe, for example, there's a subject you're just not comprehending very well and you need it read a little bit slower. You can do that. It also has font and color changing. And what I really like about it, even though I don't mind helping any students, is they have online help and videos so that we don't have to spend hours and hours training you how to use it. You can watch a quick video. In fact, to show you what it looks like, I'm going to show you the speech video that shows you how speech works. We're only going to watch the first minute or so of it, though.
Speech. You can have the text of your document read aloud to you. To do this, click on the play icon.
Gladiator fights were first introduced in 264 BC at the funeral of a nobleman.
To stop it reading, click on the stop icon. The text is highlighted as it is read. This visual
So again, there's no reason to watch that full 6-minute video, but that shows you exactly how to actually use the tool. And again, it's that reading study tool that you can get to help you that might, you know, it may not be for everyone, but it's worth a try and it's free. It also has some writing tools in there that if you want to explore, you can as well. There's videos of how to use those. Patricia.
So do y'all have any strategies that you might want to try in your classes that we kind of talked a little bit about here, whether it be some of the technology or some of the old-fashioned ways, some new things that you learned? Yes, sir? Yes, sir? The echo pen, the sonnet as well. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so actually on the CARS website, if you go to there, there'll be an email that says for a full version contact. You'll have a link to download to download the free version, the trial version, and it'll ask you, like, for example, if you need a Windows or Mac download, and then from there there'll be instructions to download to get it extended email will be there. I say it's me. It's not technically my personal email, but it's an email that I work with my team on making sure licenses get extended. So it's actually in the instructions. Okay. And it's step-by-step instructions on how to install it. It's very easy. Good question.
Oh, the worry sheet. Yeah, that really is good. If you studying and you have a lot happen on your mind, a worry sheet is good to just kind of put down some of those ideas and then come back to them once you're done with your study session. Okay.
And for everyone to fill out your evaluations. If you didn't get an evaluation, they'll be passed around. And our contact information as well as the UCF note-taking is there. So just raise your hand and she'll bring one around. Some business cards that I'll put up here at the corner. If you did have more questions to ask me technological offline, you're welcome to email me or call me at SAS. I'll leave some cards up here. Thank you all very much for coming.